This is DeliveranceMinistry.fm VideoCast number 40. Hello again, everybody. Welcome to another episode of DeliveranceMinistry.fm, where we give you proven insights about the demonic realm and deliverance ministry so that you can wage spiritual warfare more effectively. This is Dr. Don Ibbotson here again, as always, with my co-host and colleague, Dr. Phil.
Hey.
Good to have you, Phyllis.
Oh, it's good to be here.
This is fun, this series, isn't it? We're enjoying doing it.
Yeah.
It is.
Temperaments are fun. I think that was my favorite part in going through the masters and through the counseling program was the temperaments.
This whole temperament analysis and temperament field is part of the counseling side of our house here. We do a lot of deliverance, but we're licensed counselors. We do a lot of Christian counseling, and that's the topic that we've been looking at in this series. We're did part 4 of a 6-part series looking at really elements of spiritual warfare for different temperaments. Mm-hmm. With the first session number 1, we kind of gave an overview of temperaments. I encourage you to go back and listen to that if you haven't listened to it already. You really need to do that and be familiar with temperaments to get the most out of this session. And the first sessions 2 and 3, we've done the other in sessions 2 and 3, we've looked at 2 of the temperaments already. And today we're going to look at the sanguine temperament. And the idea is that as you understand your temperament, the strengths and weaknesses of each temperament, recognizing and knowing that the demonic realm knows a lot about our temperaments as well, that they're going to use specific strategies and tactics on different temperament types. They're not going to try to do everything the same with everybody because we all have different strengths and weaknesses. And so the idea is if we understand the strengths and weaknesses of our temperament, then we're going to consider in this podcast, we're going to share with you our perspective on some of the most common demonic strongholds that we see operating in people who are primarily of the sanguine temperament. Now, as we mentioned before, this model that we use, the Arnold profile system, looks at our temperament type in 3 different areas: inclusion, control, and affection. So it's very rare, quite frankly, that someone is purely sanguine in all 3 areas. Some people will come in and they've had other models. Well, I'm sanguine or I'm melancholy. Very rare that someone is the same in all 3. So what we're sharing with you here is just pure sanguine temperament traits. And if you know somebody or have had the analysis done yourself and find out you're primarily sanguine, this can help you. And it's worth mentioning that this temperament analysis is part of what we do at our counseling center. If you've ever been curious about your temperament, please contact us. We can do it with you online, or we can do it with you wherever you are, in our office or over the internet. Go over it. Extremely valuable. So that's enough of a sales pitch on that. Let's jump right in and talk about main elements of the sanguine temperament. And I think the phrase that we use most commonly about someone with a sanguine temperament is,
they're sunshine on a cloudy day.
They come into a room, the sanguine temperament, they come into a room and it lights up.
It lights up. They're very colorful. They're intriguing people, and they're just affectionate, and they're outgoing, and they're inspired. They're relationship oriented. So yeah, they do. They just light that room right up.
Yeah, they like, I think that's a good picture. Just, poof, the sun comes in. They like to be the center of attention many times. They are very people oriented.
Yeah,
They're
like
very
people.
Friendly, outgoing, tend to be optimists.
Yes.
They see the glasses always half full.
Oh, yes.
And getting fuller.
That's right.
Tend to be very tough-minded, very perfectionist, task-oriented also. They're good, and extroverts. Like you'll see them around people. They're good leaders. Yeah. They're very capable of making good decisions, intuitive decisions, taking on responsibilities. They can get stuff done in a disciplined manner, and they've got the will many times to carry things out.
As long as they don't get distracted.
We're to talk about here. We're getting all the strengths out, and as we said, there are no better or worse temperaments, but there are definitely strengths and weaknesses to different temperament types. And so They're capable for their deep personal relationships, that spouses and family members of expressing a great deal of love and affection.
Yeah, they are the lovers.
They can be, absolutely. And so a lot of strengths, a lot of, and sometimes people look at somebody and they see somebody, quote, very charismatic, and they say, wow, I'd like to be like that person, and we've painted out or pointed out a lot of the good strengths of the temperament, and there are a lot of strengths, and what we want to do now is talk about some of the weaknesses of the temperament. And I think probably the most important thing to start with in general about the sanguine temperament in any area, whether it's inclusion, control, and affection, they express a high need for control or affection, and they also have a very high need in each of these areas. And so the challenge is that they can swing. We see, I guess, one characteristic, I guess you could say sort of a negative characteristic, is these temperament types can have fairly dramatic mood swings.
Yeah, they can go from 0 to 60 in 60 seconds with those mood swings too. It's very difficult for others to keep up with that once they start to tank.
Right. They're up high highs and low lows.
They're the bipolar swing, right?
Well, yeah, and we don't, right, and that's the word people use. It's like, Dan, we're not trying to muddy the water here. We're not talking about bipolar disorder. That's
but with the moods, it can go high and low, just like that.
Exactly, and so, but there's mood swings, and then the other side of it, though, apart from the mood, is they can swing with what's called the independent mode or the dependent mode, and by that I mean they can be in one period of time they can be very good. We talked about being a good leader, and decisive, and taking charge, and strong will, get things done. But then if they get swung over into the dependent mode, then they just seem to get very frustrated. They're just
needy.
They get needy and they can't decide anything. And the thing is, and we research more on these temperaments, and we have a lot more on our website. Sometimes it's very difficult. These things aren't switches you can turn off and on in people. They're but I think being aware of them, you can manage them and just get out of the negative part of it more quickly.
I think the thing that swings the moods with the sanguines so quickly is if they're taken away from being around people. If they're put in a situation where they're kept in their room, or they're isolated, or they've taken on a job where they don't know a lot of people, and they don't have that posse that they run with, and that's going to shift their mood. And a lot of times, if you get them out, get them in the mall, get them around people, get them circulating, boy, their mood goes zipping right back up again.
It does.
So it's environmentally.
They're very sensitive to their environment. I think that's an excellent point to make. They're sometimes just a shift and a change in scenery.
Yeah.
Can make all the difference to the world. And for other temperaments, it doesn't matter. That their mood goes with them. They're just a function. They're shifting scenery isn't going to make a huge difference. But with the sanguines, sometimes that change can make a difference.
So the mall is a good prescription for the sanguine. No.
There you go. Sometimes that works. I believe that's true.
Yeah.
That not being a sanguine, I don't have personal. I don't have that in my.
Well, makeup. I do kind of have it in mine, and I know that the mall air does help once in a while when you've been away from people too long, and if you can't have a function to go to, boy, I tell you what, you just go shop for some sunglasses or a new pair of shoes. Everything is happy again.
Brings you out of the funk. So that's the some main elements of the sanguine temperament. So you've got these swings, the mood swings, the dependent, independent mode that can happen in this person. They're up high highs and the low lows. And of course you want to manage those. I think you want to minimize those. The swings, it can be hard on a person. It can be hard if you live with a sanguine, it can be very hard dealing with that.
I'm laughing.
So, you want to be able to manage those things. So we've talked about the strengths. What are some of the major weaknesses that we see or that we can assign to somebody who is primarily sanguine primarily of the sanguine temperament?
Well, I think, again, we've already talked about the moods, but the moods is a big part of it. Just the
mood swings.
The mood swings. I mean, it's very difficult for someone that you're in relationship with to keep up with those mood swings from one moment to the next, and anything can trigger it. So I think moody is one of the biggest main weaknesses. And I know the sanguines don't like being moody either. They don't like that part about their temperament, but
some people try to medicate it.
Yeah, they do.
Bring the ups down and the downs up.
Yeah.
Which we're not fans of, obviously. We're a Christian Counseling Center, and the Lord can really work and help us in that area. But it can really not be fun to be caught up in those mood swings.
Right,
So that's a big negative. Right. What's another one?
They can be weak-willed oftentimes, and they can take on the behaviors of others just to be accepted.
When they're in the dependent mode.
So, like, say if they're out with a crowd and, they don't drink, but if they're in a crowd where people are having drinks and stuff, in order not to be rejected, they may just pick up a glass of wine just so that they don't look like they're different. And so they can pick up the moral behaviors of the people that they're hanging around with. And that can sometimes take a sanguine way down the wrong direction. I mean, we're older, but think about when you were like 15 or 16 years old and you were making some of those lifestyle choices. Picking up behaviors of others is probably some of the snares that got you into some of the fixes that you got into as a teenager.
The sanguines have this dependent and independent conflict, and when they're in that dependent mode, they will associate with, and they will really, we talked about, it's kind of self-indulgence, narcissistic, very weak-willed, and will take on and do things for other people that can take on the behaviors of people.
Right.
And but when they're in the independent mode, they can take on those responsibilities and do things very well in that independent mode. So they can
be very charming and take on lots of responsibilities. Yeah.
All right. What's the third area of weakness that we see in the sanguine temperament?
Well, they can be easily devastated. I think that they have such a high need for love and approval that if they have a failed relationship, it can devastate them. And
they have a high need, right? They need a lot of love. They need a lot of stroking. They need a lot of love and affection.
Yeah.
So if they don't get it, they are
devastated.
They're devastated.
Yeah. And you know what? It's a kind of an empty bucket with the sanguine temperament too. They have such a high need and a high want of love that it's almost impossible for the spouse to fill it.
There's somebody to
and so like the spouse is always, never seems to be enough. I can't ever please them. And that's a real rough part with the sanguine temperament and affection.
And if they're not, and they can also, I think, be plagued with feelings of jealousy if they see someone else
getting it.
And I mean, I've even heard it from parents. Like a father will be jealous of the attention, love, and affection that the wife shows to their baby, and it's like it's just hard to sometimes grasp that, but it's like that can be part of it. If they feel like they need all that love and affection and they're not getting it, and somebody else is, then that jealousy can really start to rise up. And so they have a high need that, like you say, that nobody can really meet.
Rises up in siblings too. You'll get that with the siblings too. You pay attention to her more than you do me, and then that causes problems.
Exactly.
Yeah, same thing.
So
easily devastated.
So those are the areas that pick, very, once again, the last one we talked about being very easily offended, or if somebody if not receiving the affection that they need, the mood swings, rampant, and the dependent, independent swings as well, and then just picking up the bad behaviors of others. Really, that whole weak-willed, and I think it's important that when they're in that dependent mode, they can very weak-willed. They'd be very self-indulgent too, right? They're just they're just
too much mall, too much of the mall.
Exactly, and just feeding themselves, and so that's a bad thing. Okay, so those are the main weaknesses. What, in light of that and in line with that, what are the most common demonic strongholds? When we minister deliverance to people who are primarily of the sanguine temperament, what are the most common demonic strongholds that we see at work in sanguines? I
think the slumber stronghold would be the one that's the most interesting to the sanguine because of the mood change. And I think that comes in with double-mindedness. I joked around.
Spirit. That's one of the spirits under that strong.
I joked around about bipolar, but the real word for that is it's a double-minded spirit. And it keeps a person indecisive and confused because they can't make up their mind. It's like 1 minute it's one way and 1 minute it's the next, and then it just gets, they can't make a decision. So they're buffeted, like it says, to and fro on the waves, a double-minded man. So it keeps them not knowing the direction, and it also has them ditch responsibility. They'd rather dump what they're supposed to be doing when they're in that mode, and then just go out and have a good time. So they can break commitments. They don't end up finishing what they've started when they get double-minded like this, and then they can become apathetic. And then because there wasn't really that much that wasn't really that much fun. I don't really want to do that. I'm bored. You'll hear that from the sanguine. So they're constantly looking for that place where they're going to have the good time. So they can apathy can set in, indifference can set in. Broken commitments certainly to those places where they haven't finished what they've started, and then that double-mindedness and
until they get back into
their dependent mode, independent mode, where they're able to do all these things. And it's I think this is one of the more interesting temperaments in that realm. I mean, it's just these things are almost like I say, they're not switches you can turn off and on. So it's being aware of it, that these are the tendencies. When that's what's happening, I think that we talk consistently about the mind battle, winning the mind battle, knowing yourself, knowing this weakness, and then being able to capture the thoughts quickly and start to do something to rectify it. Right? Isn't that? I mean, I wish there was no real simple answers here, because it is such an interesting temperament. It's not one that we see a lot, maybe as much as frequently as some others. I'm not, I would venture to say there's somebody at least who's pure sanguine in that realm. And so, but the whole process, being able to capture these thoughts quickly and doing some things that will bring you out of the lows quickly, or when you're in the high mode, just being able to be aware of that too, that you don't get caught up on that and go down the path of, abusing people or running over people, or just driving people to exhaustion, or being rude or indisciplined. It's that side of it as well. So, I guess another specific strategy that might be helpful for the sanguines is just, this really getting the revelation, if you like, and being secure and knowing who they are in Christ, right? Secure in God's love. Yeah. I think that goes along with the other stronghold too, because the second most common stronghold with that is the fear stronghold. I think that fear comes in because of that high need for approval and that high love demand that they have. They express a lot of love, and they need a lot of love, and they expect a lot of love. And if they don't get it, then that's where that fear of failure and that fear of rejection and that worry comes in. So the second stronghold I think that we need to look at too with them is that fear for insecurity and inadequacy.
So the first one is double-mindedness.
Right.
The second one, insecurity and inadequacy under fear.
Right.
And that's based out of just the insecurity. What's the root of that, do you think?
I think it's just not getting the love that they need, the perceived amount of love that they feel that they should have. I'm sure it just doesn't measure, just not enough.
They can't get loved enough.
Yeah.
So in those instances, we tell people we need to get that. You're like you said, they can make unreasonable demands on their spouses or partners or family members. So they say, Lord, just get from the Lord, right?
Yep.
So,
absolutely.
Yeah, we do see that insecurity and inadequacy, and is big on that.
And then the third, I think the third stronghold area would be the jealousy stronghold, and that's that place of where they get angry and resentful, and some of the words you said, self-indulgent, a little bit narcissistic in their controlish areas. So they become selfish, and if they're not getting what they want, they get resentful, get angry. Yeah, frustrated and impatience. I think impatience is a big one here.
Right. So a lot of things under jealousy. That's where impatience is. That's where anger is. We see selfishness, I think, under there as well. And so just
and then when they swing to that dependent mode, then it probably turns to self-blaming, self-anger, and self-impatience, right?
Yeah, and I think right, and then they caught up once again in kind of the fear thing too.
Right.
They're independent, they're in that inadequacy, and they're just can't make decisions. They need help. They just can't feel like they can do anything, and so that's a lot what we see when they're in that kind of that dependent mode.
Right.
So double-mindedness, insecurity, and inadequacy, and then selfishness, anger under that strong man of jealousy are some of the major strongholds that we see. And as we've talked about, some of these, they can open the door for other things as well. Any of these can open the door for spirits of addictions and
we're
pornography.
just picking the top 3.
These are in the middle column, right? And so, but many times, as we've talked about, some of the things people are dealing with, even the realm of addictions, or whether it's perversions or pornography, there's other strongholds that have opened the door, and these are the ones that we see. So that's why we're really kind of highlighting those, because a lot of strongholds, the perversions, pornography, addictions, they're common to any, no one temperament, I think, has a license on those. So those are the main strongholds, and we've touched on them again a little bit about. But emphasize them once again about some of the specific spiritual warfare strategies we can suggest for sanguines, and I'll be honest, it's a bit more of a challenge to say these are specific, or these are because because they're in this independent and dependent mode, the mood swings, the high highs and the low lows. Man, it's just all the generic scriptural advice and counseling things that you would give to people really apply, right? Winning the mind battles, taking the thoughts captive, knowing who they are in Christ, getting their love from God. I mean, it's really hard to hone in, I think, on just a few that are really specific.
I think a good prayer for a sanguine, though, would be to ask God for wisdom. I think that would be a really good discernment. Discernment.
Wisdom and discernment.
Wisdom and discernment, because a lot of times, based on what mode they're in, they'll make decisions too quickly, and spontaneity is one of their things. And that doesn't often lend to wisdom. They'll make decisions quick, like in the mall. You'll buy something you don't need, or you'll do something when you're with a crowd that you shouldn't do. So a lot of that needs to come with great discernment and great wisdom, and wisdom, I think, is the prayer.
No, that's good. That is good, because we've talked about before is diagnosed is half cured, if you could say, if you understand this, your temperament, and you know it, and you see it in black and white, and you know the strengths, and you know the weaknesses, then you, and it's like true that with any of these temperaments, you can be prepared, like how to deal with these situations when they come up. What do I need to start doing to get out of the low? How do I deal, with the things that are on the highs? And if you're in a relationship with your spouse, they can maybe help you with these things too, and say and navigate you through this, because it's a very the pendulum. It's like very much a pendulum type of temperament, ups and downs, and it's just being able to manage that, control that, be aware of it as it's unfolding. Learn the triggers. That's so good. What are the triggers? What are the triggers? And so that's really important. And like I say, a lot of strengths in this temperament. We've outlined them, but some weaknesses that the demonic realm will try to exploit. And so being aware of those and how to deal with those can be helpful. So,
well, you know what? This one is a strong love. So don't discount that. I think this one can give the love, one of the best ways out of all the temperaments. So it's a good one. It's a good one. Don't feel badly just because you have got some different elements to it. So love is the greatest of all, right? And this one's very capable of giving that kind of love. It
is. And we talked about the needs in each of the areas: inclusion, social orientation, control, and affection. That a person expresses a high need, and they have a high need. And so sometimes they have a high need to control, but sometimes they have a high need to be controlled. And that's where the problem, the swing happens. But yet a need for affection can give a lot, can receive a lot, love to be around people, need to be around people. And so it's that control area that causes the swings, I think. And so just a very interesting temperament, and like you say, just really a lot to give and to offer to their partner, to their spouses and family, and even to the body of Christ. So we hope you found this helpful. Those of you who are sanguines or know a sanguine, pass this podcast on to them, and please go to our website for much more information, more visual things even than we can even try to cover here and show. We're doing this all audio. There's some things that really benefit from seeing visuals and pictures like we have on the website, and articles Please let us know how you like this podcast and others that we're doing. Visit us on iTunes. Our station name is deliveranceministry.fm. You can look for us there. Please leave us a review. We'd really like that. It always helps you to get some review love on iTunes, helps you get found by more people, and we very much appreciate you doing that. Sign up for our free resource library. It's on our counseling center and academy websites at andbcounseling.com or andbacademy.com. Gets access to all our podcasts, articles and whatnot. You can see also our paid resources that we have there. Deliverance Ministry Plain and Simple Manual gives an overview of our deliverance ministry processes. We have boot camp training programs for adults, learn how to minister deliverance. You can learn how to minister deliverance to children as well. We have some spiritual warfare primer videos that you can get access to. Learn about our Christian counseling degree programs there as well. A lot of good information there. Take a look at our Warrior Partners page too. That gives you an opportunity to sow into the ministry as a one-time gift or ongoing monthly gifts to help us expand the ministry of deliverance. I'd like to thank you for listening. Please keep in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you. Stay tuned in weeks ahead for the next podcast. Thank you for listening, and God bless you.